disruptive.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So we've all heard the stories, the nefarious tales of, these warmongering, evil, nefarious foreign leaders that are causing the most havoc and destruction around the world. Right now, we're, facing the crisis of Vladimir Putin, but also Xi Jinping of China and Nicolas Maduro and Bashir al-Assad and Saddam Hussein and who's the guy of Libya? I'm blanking on the name there. Muammar Gaddafi. These are the notorious figures that we need to eradicate from the earth because they are doing nefarious stuff. We always hear those stories, right? And we're still continuing to hear those stories and trying to manufacture these boogeymen to sell us the idea of war. Because we have to manufacture terror before we go fight it. Because that's the business incentive of the military-industrial complex, which we were warned about back in the 50s, that it was going to continue to flourish and grow, and if we don't stop it and put a cap on it, it was going to decimate into this global empire of contractors and investors and bankers that want to eradicate people off the face of the earth for their own riches. So, take, for example, of what Nikki Haley said in her town hall about Vladimir Putin and the Ukrainian crisis, because this is an example showing every single politician in Washington, whether you're Republican or Democrat, because they're both war parties, both part of the war machine, and both efforting their support into this manufactured cabal of advancements in war. This is what she said about the importance of winning the Ukrainian war, which we all know firsthand it's never going to happen, but they're still trying to continue to propagate this and manipulate people to sell the idea that this war is going to continue on.
This is bigger than Ukraine. This is a war about freedom, and it's one we have to win. You look at those Ukrainians and what they do when Russia invaded their freedoms. They moved in there, went to the front lines, and fought for their country. The women said, we're not going to stay back. They made Molotov cocktails to defend their country. Everybody gave them 5 days to survive. But yet their passion and their will pushed them forward. What we have to understand is a win for Ukraine is a win for all of us, because tyrants tell us exactly what they're going to do. What we heard, China said they were going to take Hong Kong. They did it. Russia said they were going to invade Ukraine. We watched that happen. China says Taiwan's next. We better believe them. Russia said Poland and the Baltics are next. If that happens, we're looking at a world war. This is about preventing war. And so the way you prevent war.
Yes, because the United States knows exactly how to prevent war. They're kind of laid back. They don't really go in and escalate or take over countries or overthrow their leaders. Oh, wait, we did that since the 50s. Do I really have to show you the map of all the military bases that we know about? There's secret ones that we don't even know about. But all the military bases that we have occupying the territories all around the world, there's over 1,000 that we can keep track of. But we're so laid back and we're so we're so detente on this, as opposed to Vladimir Putin and his tyrant of Russia, or China and their tyranny of the Communist Party. Oh my God, they are going to decimate the world. As they're partnering, teaming up to, hold stability for their economic pressures, while us are basically doing suicide runs, sending all of our money to invest in this failure of a war that we're killing our own empire. That's what's happening right now. Our own empire is collapsing within ourselves because we extend militarily to the point that we cannot stop this. And just like the Romans, just like any other empire in history, that is what happens when an empire collapses, is they extend militarily and invade in other countries while not realizing that they're destroying their own territory. So that's what people like Nikki Haley, trying to promote this war as some sort of vitriol for everybody, fails to realize. And I I don't know if it's just the fact that they're paid to not realize this, or the fact that they're not getting the memo, they're not seeing the picture clearly, or if it's just, boogeyman bad, we gotta take him down, and I don't care what cost, because I already have the good health care, I already have good education, I already got a, 6-figure salary, so the rest of you can, suck on it. It's like that Stephen Colbert bit when he said, like, I don't care if gas is, like, up to $9. It's definitely worth a healthy conscience for me. He said that on a comedy bit. That was embarrassing. But do you ever wonder why these stories come about? Why they have to manifest some boogeyman? Well, it turns out there's a theory to this. And there's a video I want to show you about the theory of the evil man, and why notorious predominant warmongers like Nikki Haley, like Joe Biden, like Kamala Harris, like Lindsey Graham, are trying to promote this war as much as possible, like Adam Schiff and other people. Why they have to say and demonize a foreign leader that we really don't know anything about personally, and try to say he's the tyrant of the world, when really we're the ones occupying the entirety of the world and setting it on fire. Take a listen to this.
It's always this story of the evil man. This is basically how international politics is explained to the stupid. It's an evil man out there, and he has to be killed, and when he's dead, everything is fine. And it's a very stupid story, because basically international politics is about access to oil, to gas, to resources. It's about the extensions of military alliance like NATO. It's about regime change. It's about opening up markets so you can import. It's about, it's about money. It's not about the evil man. The evil man story was for the kids when you're 5 years old or 8 years old.
So I don't know if people can see that there. It says, this is what Vladimir Putin said in a speech addressing to the Western nations. He said, we believed in Western values, but it turned out everything depended on money. And all of these values were purely hypocrisy. Millions around the world increasingly see America not as a model of democracy, but as relying solely on a brutal force. And that's what we turned out to be. Because we need these evil men, we need to manufacture these wars to keep our military economy afloat. Because obviously, we're not at war with anybody. We're not actually physically in a war with someone until we have to manufacture aggression towards somebody else so that we can placate to that, and we take occupation of this, and we take the opportunity to go slaughter a bunch of people for business. That is what we were warned about in the 50s when Dwight D. Eisenhower told us to beware of the military-industrial complex. That this is going to be a lucrative global empire business that was going to impact every other territory around the world in manufacturing these wars and manufacturing aggressions to slaughter one another and kill one another, not for democracy, not for humanitarian, not for anything that we have, spewed out of our mouths in the namesake. It is nothing of any purpose other than business, other than hijacking resources, other than, securing capital. That's all this really is. And that's what he's telling you in that video here. Let's watch this again.
It's always this story of the evil man. This is basically how international politics is explained to the stupid. It's an evil man out there, and he has to be killed, and when he's dead, everything is fine. And it's a very stupid story, because basically international politics is about access to oil, to gas, to resources. It's about the extensions of military alliance.
And how do I know that he is correct on this? Because notorious figures like the president, Donald Trump, at the time, when he was president, announced on network, on television, that the purpose of us being in Syria right now and still continuing to occupy Syria is for the oil. The purpose of manufacturing aggression with Venezuela, for the oil. Why we entered Iraq, for the oil. Why we went to Afghanistan? Mineral wealth. Why we cared so much about Vietnam? Mineral wealth. Why we cared so much about occupying territory in Ukraine? NATO alliance getting us towards Russia so we could destroy them economically. And then what happened? It destroyed us economically. We got bounced back and we got our ass bitten hard. The Russian economy is booming. It's booming to the point that their currency is #1, while the US dollar is continuing to decline. The petrodollar is in jeopardy. A bunch of nations are gathering together to join the Russian Federation in creating their own dominion, their own currency that will occupy territory, and the US dollar is continuing to fail. That's why I know that these manufactured stories about the evil man and Vladimir Putin is complete BS. It's to sell you the idea of war. Because if you believe a boogeyman, you're going to have that childlike feeling of, oh, we got to stop this guy because he's a monster. Whereas we know the monsters are actually the ones that are telling us who the monsters are. The real monsters are the ones that actually occupy control over you. The ones that actually can do something. The ones that actually can stop war at the brink of a pen. They could easily stop a war. But they choose not to. Why? Business. It's always about business. Even when their own people are being slaughtered and massacred in other countries. Just like that journalist that was killed in Saudi Arabia. What did they do? Screw it. It's about the business. We're going to continue our alliance with them. For the business. Because we really don't care about the people. We really don't care about the humanitarian efforts. Don't believe any of that horse shit. So, that when people do believe the theory of the evil man, that's where we get these notorious idiot personalities like Rachel Maddow that has been spewing Russiagate ever since. Because when Donald Trump became president, it screwed with their brain so much that they had to fabricate a story that Vladimir Putin was somehow connected to a game show host and overthrew our democracy, which is why all of America decided, hey, we need to elect this ridiculous game show host instead of a notorious evil mastermind like Hillary Clinton. And that was the only plausible explanation other than the fact that democracy in America is such a joke and both political parties are so disgusting towards the American public that they threw their dice gambling on a game show host rather than taking another 4 years of the status quo, because the status quo was killing them. Rachel Maddow could not ever come to terms with that, so she had to manufacture this completely arbitrary idea that Russia was involved with a game show host to overthrow the American system. And this is how much of a lunatic she became. In one episode, this is the amount of times that she's mentioned Russia or Vladimir Putin in one episode.
Russia, Vladimir Putin, Russia hates Russia, Putin, Russia, Moscow, Russian, pro-Russian, the Russians, Moscow, Russia, Putin, Russia against us, the Russians rush against the U.S., the Russians, Russian government scheme, the Russians, Vladimir Putin, Putin and Russia, Moscow, Russia, the Russians, Putin, Russia, the Soviet Empire, the second of the 20th century's great evils, communism, communism, Russia, assault by Russia,
Putin despises the West in general and the United States in particular, the Soviet Empire. Russia. They're the adversary. They want to bring us down, the Soviet Union.
Russia.
Undermine the West, Soviet communists on the left.
Russia. That does it for us tonight. We will see you again tomorrow.
That's always my favorite at the end, after all that. Oh, thanks a lot. We'll see you again. We'll do this all again sometime. But that is the childhood-like syndrome of electing Donald Trump. They have Trump derangement syndrome. And they go their childhood reflex of thinking that he's an evil, nefarious bastard because he's an evil, nefarious bastard. In their mind, he's such a Darwin, such an evil mastermind criminal that he teamed up with Russia to overthrow the democracy, the precious democracy that I cherish so much, Rachel Maddow. I cherish so much when I was enjoying democracy for myself, but now that's intervening with my lifestyle, oh my God. Now I gotta concoct this evil scheme that somehow they got together and overthrew democracy and they're criminalizing the entire world. Russia, Putin. And that went on for, what is it, 5 years now? This has been going on for the past few years. Still continuing to do this. Why? Because exactly what that guy said. It's a childlike mentality to think of this evil man is doing all the wrongdoings without any proof or evidence. Just the fact that someone's telling you that this guy is evil because he looks evil is not really a fundamental basis. But what really is happening is that the military empire that owns MSNBC, that has control of the media, that's spewing all this misinformation, the criminal cabal, the intelligence communities, are plotting all this together to exploit you, to oppress you, to manipulate you, to sell you the idea of war so that they can go overseas willy-nilly and do absolute destruction on the rest of the world. And they've done it with country after country after country since after World War II, probably even before then. Because that is what our military empire continues to do. We're the terrorists. We're the evil, nefarious doers. We're the tyrants. We occupy the entire world. And we manufactured this Vladimir Putin as some sort of evil, nefarious bastard, even though the evil, nefarious bastard right now has control over the United States government, the intelligence community, everything. The real evil, nefarious bastard is the commander-in-chief. And the commander-in-chief that could barely stand on stage and finish a sentence. But is he really the mastermind, or is it the intelligence communities? Because he thinks, because the fact that Chuck Schumer told Donald Trump directly on camera that the intelligence communities have 9 ways of Sunday to take down the president, he thinks that there is definitely a deep state. There is definitely a criminal cabal of sociopaths that are willing to do the outright evil, unspeakable, inhumane things to one another, to advance careers, to push policies, to gain power, to maintain power, to control, to oppress, to dominate on every single factor in the world. That's what's really happening. And that's why a lot of these people that are still continuing to push Russiagate are just they're just childish. They're clinching onto a childlike trauma to think that Vladimir Putin has something to do with their why democracy is in a shamble, when they don't even realize democracy was already in a shamble in the United States for years. And they're part of that problem. So, just a little factoid of the day.